Hotep, everybody. It is Sunday, September 21st, 2025. Welcome to the African History Network show, where we have a jam-packed show for you today. Today, we're going to talk about Charlie Kirk's anti-Black statements and political views. Now, we know on Wednesday, September 10th, 2025, conservative activist and co-founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, was tragically shot and killed in Utah. He was at Utah Valley University having a rally, and unfortunately he was shot and killed. Now, since that time, numerous articles have been written about statements he's made in the past. Videos have been put out. You saw me on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, September 12th, 2025. And also I was on Carl Nelson's show, The Big Show, on WOL AM out of Baltimore on Thursday, September 11th. And on both shows, this topic came up. So what we're going to do today is get deep into some of his anti-Black comments over the years, especially his comments about African-American women, accomplished, intelligent African-American women. Okay, so one of the articles that I posted on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, comes from The Guardian, theguardian.com. Charlie Kirk, in his own words, prowling blacks and the Great Replacement Theory. Prowling blacks and the Great Replacement Theory. So we're going to start with that one. And you can go back and look at our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, as well as my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. And you can see my appearance on Roland Martin Unfiltered from September 12th, where we got deep into this conversation. Okay, let's look at this piece here from The Guardian from Thursday, September 11th, 2025. So this is called Charlie Kirk, in his own words, prowling blacks and the Great Replacement Strategy. And one of the reasons why I think it's important to have this discussion is I saw comments from some African Americans, and it wasn't the majority of the comments that I saw, but I saw some comments from some African Americans who weren't that familiar with Charlie Kirk, agreed with a lot of what he said. I saw some comments from Black MAGA as well, and they're just brain damaged. So we're going to have this conversation to deal with this, okay? So let's take a look at this here. Charlie Kirk, in his own words, prowling blacks and the Great Replacement Theory. The far right commentator didn't pull his punches when discussing his bigoted views on current events. How Charlie Kirk turned campuses into cultural battlefields and ushered in Trump's assault on universities. Okay, so one of the things they talk about, they go through and deal with some of his different comments from his podcast show and different comments on different topics. On race, Charlie Kirk said, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. Okay, because Charlie Kirk was against diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know he had bigoted views. He was a white nationalist, white supremacist. That's just to put it bluntly. Okay, and when you go and research him, you'll see this. Okay, he said, if you're a WNBA pot smoking black lesbian, do you get treated better than a United States Marine? He said, happening all the time in urban America, prowling blacks go around for fun to target white people. That's a fact that's happening more and more. He said, if I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, I wonder if she's there because of her excellence, or if she, or is she there because of affirmative action? Now, this quote here, talking about Joanne Reed from formerly of MSNBC, and Michelle Obama, Sheila Jackson Lee, this one got a lot of coverage since he was killed. Okay, and I talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered on September 12th, as well as on Carl Nelson's show. When you deal with people like Charlie Kirk, they have a hatred, an intense antipathy for intelligent, educated African American women, unless they capitulate to them like Candace Owens does. And she's not bright, she's not smart at all. Okay, people like Charlie Kirk, people like these white nationalists, white supremacists, they appeal to ignorant people. Okay, they appeal to ignorant people. They appeal to MAGA. Okay, and these are people who are easily duped. These are people usually don't have a deep understanding of history, economics, law, politics, things of this nature. They're easily duped and fooled. Okay, if we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called racist. Now they're coming out, they're saying it for us. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously. Now, he said this on the Charlie Kirk show, July 13th, 2023. Now, when Junior Varsity Vance, J.D. Vance, when he guest hosted Charlie Kirk's show after Charlie Kirk was killed, he lied and said Charlie Kirk never said that. Okay. Okay, let's go to this clip here. Now, this is Junior Varsity Vance, J.D. Vance, who on the campaign trail, remember when he lied and said that the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio were eating the dogs and cats? Okay, so after Charlie Kirk was killed, J.D. Vance, Vice President J.D. Vance, guest hosted his late friend's show. And on the show, J.D. Vance said that Charlie Kirk never said what Charlie Kirk actually said. Let's take a look at this.
And I quote, the writer accuses Charlie of saying, and I quote, black women do not have brain processing power to be taken seriously. But if you go and watch the clip, the very clip she links to, you realize he never said anything like that. He never uttered those words.
If we would have said that Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
Okay, so there you have it. J.D. Vance is shown that he has no clue what he's talking about, or he's just trying to dupe people. And what we see taking place is a whitewashing of a white nationalist ideology, a whitewashing of the legacy of Charlie Kirk. Okay, and we saw the well, some of y'all, so I didn't watch a lot of it. I saw clips of it on MSNBC. We saw the memorial service today in Arizona for Charlie Kirk. And there's a whole whitewashing taking place, just like they're trying to whitewash history, just like they're trying to and have been banning books dealing with African American history, the civil rights movement, slavery, things of this nature, just like they're trying to whitewash the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and some other Smithsonian museums to try to remove history that they don't like, that doesn't fit their narrative of American excellence and things of this nature. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to whitewash and sanitize Charlie Kirk's legacy. Okay, now let's continue with some of Charlie Kirk's anti-black statements. Let's go back to this article from The Guardian. Okay, now let's see here. There's some other ones that I think there were some other ones that I had. Okay, on gun violence, Charlie Kirk said, I think it's worth it to have a cost of unfortunately some gun deaths every single year. On gun violence, Charlie Kirk said, I think it's worth it to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Okay, this is from April 5th, 2025. April 5th, 2023, I should say. When it comes to immigration, and we know that he was a proponent of the white supremacist great replacement theory. He said America was at its peak when we halted immigration for 40 years and we dropped our foreign-born percentage to its lowest level ever. We should be unafraid to do that. Okay, he said that's August 22nd, 2025. He also said the American Democratic Party hates this country. They want to see it collapse. They love it when America becomes less white. They love it when America becomes less white. Okay. Is that why the January 6th insurrection took place? Because, you know, for the people who speak out against political violence, for some reason they forget January 6th. They forget the January 6th insurrection that Donald Trump incited. I talked about that on Roland Martin Unfiltered also. March 1st, 2024, Charlie Kirk talks about the Great Replacement Theory. He said, the Great Replacement Theory, which is well underway every single day in our southern border, is a strategy to replace white rule America with something different. A strategy to replace white rule America with something different. Okay. Then he talks about Islam as well. America has freedom of religion, of course, but we should be frank. Large dedicated Islamic areas are a threat to America. He said, we've been warning about the rise of Islam on the show to a great amount of backlash. We don't care. That's what we do here. And we said that Islam is not compatible with Western civilization. Okay, so you can check out the rest of this here. This is from theguardian.com. Charlie Kirk, in his own words, prowling blacks in the Great Replacement strategy. This is from September 11th, 2025 of Chris Stein. Now, if we look at staying with the Great Replacement Theory, if we look at this piece here from the New York Times dealing with where Charlie Kirk stood on key political issues, this is a really good one. He also, I think, is in this piece that is one of these pieces he talks about George Floyd. We're going to talk about George Floyd as well, because he called George scumbag. And I got some history about George Floyd that a lot of people don't know. Okay, but he also said that Derek Chauvin, the former Minnesota police officer who killed George Floyd, he said that Derek Chauvin should get a presidential pardon from Donald Trump. So let's look at this piece here from the New York Times, where Charlie Kirk stood on key political issues. This is from September 11th, 2025 by Ashley Ann and Maxine Joslau. So this is a really good article. If we look here at, we talked about gun violence already. And they talk about at the Turning Point USA event by Turning Point USA Faith, a division of Turning Point USA. He talked about the Second Amendment, and he said, I think it's worth to have a cost. Unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect protect our other God-given rights. But on race, right here. Now, for African Americans and other people who actually have sense, but for African Americans who are putting out positive statements about Charlie Kirk, I can tell they haven't really studied him. They haven't really studied his previous statements. Charlie Kirk believed that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a destructive force in American politics, calling its passage a quote unquote mistake that he said has been turned into an anti-white weapon. He also blamed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. for the law and was highly critical of the slain civil rights leader, calling him an awful person. Charlie Kirk said he desired a colorblind society, but blamed the veneration of Dr. King for what he saw as America's fixation on race. So this is now, first of all, Dr. King didn't advocate for a colorblind society. Okay, Dr. King was trying to dismantle white supremacy and racism. Okay, this is a trick that the white nationalists, white supremacists play, as well as black MAGA, as well as black conservatives. They say Dr. King was advocating for a colorblind society. Okay, and they try to quote from his speech, "I Have a Dream," August 28th, 1963, which one of the original names of the speech was called a cancel check. Okay, before that it was called normalcy no more, but then it was called a cancel check. It wasn't until years later that it was called "I Have a Dream," because the speech was not about a dream. When you research Clarence B. Jones was one of Dr. King's speech writers, and Clarence B. Jones wrote an article for the Washington Post where he said that in none of the drafts of that speech did the phrase "I have a dream" exist. Okay, Dr. King was speaking extemporaneously after Mahalia Jackson screamed out, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." This was at the speech at the March on Washington, August 28th, 1963. Gospel singer, and she was a friend of Dr. King as well, and she was singing to Dr. King when he was at his lowest points in the struggle. Okay, she screamed out, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." And then he shifts from talking about racism in America, discrimination, living in ghettos, fighting for voting rights, things like that. He shifts and starts talking about the dream and the beloved community. The beloved community is what happens after you dismantle white supremacy and racism. That's what they were trying to do. Okay, people like Charlie Kirk don't want to tell you this. They want to blame Dr. King for racism. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race that comes out of an ideology of European white supremacy. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, and they use that to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. So they want to blame Dr. King for the racism. They want to blame Dr. King for the 1964 Civil Rights Act. They don't want to talk about the history that happened after Reconstruction collapsed in 1877. And they don't want to talk about the Jim Crow laws that were put in place that instituted segregation, that rewrote state constitutions to impose poll taxes, literacy tests, things like this, lock African Americans out of political power, lock African Americans out of many job opportunities, etc. Then it gets, and it's going to get also codified 1896 U.S. Supreme Court case of Plessy versus Ferguson. They don't want to talk about the history of what happened that caused the 1964 Civil Rights Act to have to be implemented, that have to be created. Why was a need to strike down Jim Crow laws? How they were locking African Americans out of job opportunities, out of educational opportunities, things like that. They want to blame the people who are being oppressed for their own oppression. This is the game that people like Charlie Kirk are playing. Okay, so he blamed Dr. King for the 1964 Civil Rights Act. And he says that Dr. King desired a colorblind society, okay, but blamed the veneration of Dr. King for what he saw as America's fixation on race. He doesn't blame the racists for America's fixation on race. He blames somebody that's fighting to make America better for everybody. Dr. King also, Charlie Kirk also was a staunch opponent of affirmative action, okay, which comes about 1965, Executive Order 11246, affirmative action, to fight against racism, okay? And he was highly critical of Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, calling her a diversity hire who wasn't qualified to serve on the highest court, okay? She was highly qualified to serve on the highest court. Graduate of Harvard, highly qualified to serve on the highest court. Charlie Kirk was a community college dropout, okay? Understand. And you have a lot of these uneducated white men and some uneducated white women, but especially uneducated white men who are highly insecure and feel intimidated by intelligent, educated African Americans. And see, this is the game that people like him play. Okay, now there was a piece from I deal with this in January and February when I deal with, especially January when I deal with Dr. King Day. There was one about 5 myths about Dr. King, I think it was called. Let me find this one here. 5 myths about Martin Luther King Jr. This is from the Washington Post. Let me make sure this is the right one. Okay. Yeah, let's look at this here. This is from the Washington Post by Donna March. All right, let's take a look at this article because we have to really deal with some history here. 5 myths about Martin Luther King. This is from January 15, 2016 by Donna March for the Washington Post, okay? And myth number 1 that she deals with is King believed in a colorblind society. Since his death, Dr. King has emerged as a triumphalist figure used to reassure us that the United States has transcended its history of racial strife. Of all the minister's powerful oratory, these words from his speech at the Lincoln Memorial in 1963 are some of the most cited. Okay, he talks about, I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, end quote. But interpretations of this quote vary radically. Conservatives, including Ronald Reagan, have enlisted it to rationalize opposition to diversity programs. In 1990, African-American pundit Shelby Steele titled his anti-affirmative action memoir, The Content of Our Character, A New Vision of Race in America. But Dr. King knew that the economy was not colorblind, and he believed that the Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts would not eliminate racial disparity. After 1965, King fought against crisis levels of Black unemployment in the Watts areas of Los Angeles. He also fought for open housing in Chicago and in support of striking Black sanitation workers in Memphis, Tennessee. At the end of his life, he became particularly disheartened by the racial barriers to housing and jobs in the urban North and West. King's speech to Memphis sanitation workers a month before his 1968 assassination on the economic disparities between Blacks and whites is a better measure of his mature thought. His words could have been written in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis, quote, where there is a vast unemployment and underemployment in the Black community. They call it a social problem, okay? When there is a vast unemployment and underemployment in the Black community, they call it a social problem. When there is vast unemployment and underemployment in the white community, they call it a depression. All right. Okay, so that's Dr. King's speaking. Dr. King explicitly linked racism to economics in ways that remain sharply relevant. In his view, only direct intervention by a strong federal government could counteract the historical disparities wrought by the overlapping forces of race and class, forces that were unlikely to disappear. Okay, so check out the rest of this. They go through and dispel other myths about Dr. King. Okay. They talk about Dr. King and Malcolm X as well. And so, yeah, this is a good article. We'll check this out. 5 myths about Martin Luther King. This is by Donna Murch for the Washington Post. Okay, now if we go back to the piece here dealing with from the New York Times, where Charlie Kirk stood on key political issues. Where Charlie Kirk stood on key political issues. Okay, so he was against DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. His repudiation of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives known as DEI stretched to comments many denounced as racist. In 2024, he said, if I see a Black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. In 2021, while delivering a speech in Mankato, Minnesota, Charlie Kirk called George Floyd, the Black man whose murder by a Minneapolis police officer in 2020 provoked a broad racial justice movement. He called George Floyd a scumbag who wasn't worthy of the attention. He called George Floyd a scumbag who wasn't worthy of the attention. Now, Charlie Kirk has also said recently, before he was shot and killed, he also said that Donald Trump should give Derek Chauvin, the officer who killed George Floyd, he said Donald Trump should give Derek Chauvin a pardon also. Okay, he has some very nasty things to say about George Floyd. Now, here is, I want to go to this piece here from Black Enterprise, okay? And Charlie Kirk probably never read this article, and most of the people who follow him probably never read this article. We talked about this on the African History Network show back in, I think it was 2024. Yeah, basically back in about April or May 2024. This article deals with how African Americans have been overtaxed nearly $600 billion in property taxes, and it's due to racism, okay? If we look at this piece here from Black Enterprise. All right, let's go to this article here from Black Enterprise, okay? New book reveals how the U.S. stole $600 billion from Black Americans through unfair tax slavery. This was a book, Andrew Carl. Okay, in this article, new book reveals how the U.S. stole $600 billion from Black Americans through unfair taxes post-slavery, from unfair tax slavery. Okay, so this is a book by Professor Andrew Carl. And this is Andrew Carl, Professor of History and African American Studies at the University of Virginia, in his new book, which describes how the nation's ongoing racial wealth gap, okay, how U.S. policies created the nation's ongoing wealth gap by a system of highly unjust municipal and state taxes. Okay, Bloomberg reported tax 150 years of theft, exploitation, and dispossession in America. This book shares statistics of African Americans Okay, this tells the story of Black American land ownership and pushed laws and practices dating back to the Jim Crow era. Okay, now these are things that Charlie Kirk and people like him don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about the laws and policies that were put in place, locked African Americans out of land ownership, overtaxed us, discrimination when it comes to getting housing mortgages, how we were discriminated against when it came to using our GI Bill benefits after World War II, okay, to buy homes in newly formed suburbs so that we could acquire a property and gain wealth, things like that, like white people were able to do. Okay, one of the things he talks about here, the book pairs personal municipalities nationwide that used complex tax collection to fund distribution to white land and property owners, and the economic dynamics spanning over a century of U.S. history. Okay. Starting in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, unfair tactics were used to doubly disadvantage black landowners by artificially inflating profit for tax calculation. Starting in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, unfair tactics were used to doubly disadvantage black landowners by artificially inflating property value estimates for tax collection, overcharging them for their land, and exploiting their inability to pay as a means to seize their properties. Okay, this is one of the ways that we lost millions of acres of land. This is one of the ways that African American farmers lost millions of acres of land and their families. Okay, now they tell a story here about Hillary Thomas Stewart. Okay, in 1920, Hillary Thomas Stewart Sr. lost 24 acres of land in a tax sale quote unquote, under dubious circumstances after the great-great-grandfather of George Floyd failed to pay $18.83 in taxes. Losing the land forced the Stewart family into poverty. Losing the land forced the Stewart family into poverty. Okay? When looking at the 11 million acres of land, when looking at 11 million acres of land taken from Black Americans, to 326 in today's dollars. Not to forget the millions in taxes Black Americans have overpaid for over a century. 1870 to 2020, African Americans were overtaxed by more than $275 billion in 2023 numbers. So what a lot of people don't know is that the trajectory of George Floyd's life probably would have been much better if his great-great-grandfather had not been swindled out of his 24 acres of land and his family forced into poverty. So when you have somebody like Charlie Kirk who calls George Floyd a scumbag and then blames George Floyd for his own death, because he said from excited delirium, was on drugs, and it wasn't excited delirium and things like this. On Roland Martin Unfiltered, I talked about a article from the Huffington Post called that deals with how suspects are treated better than Black victims. Okay, how white suspects are treated better than Black victims. Let me just pull that up quickly so you all can see that. All right, let's take a look at this article here from the Huffington Post. When the media treats white suspects and killers better than Black victims. Okay, so I talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And what this article deals with, it looked at national news stories and looked at headlines. This piece is from 2014 originally, August 14, 2014. And what it deals with is how the media oftentimes goes out of their way to show how it's so much out of the character of a white suspect who killed people to exhibit that behavior. But when it's an African American that's the victim of violence or has been killed, they'll dig deep into their history to show, to blame them for their own deaths. Okay. News reports often headline claims from police. Let's see, let's back up here for a minute. News reports often headline claims from police or other officials that appear unsympathetic or dismissive of Black victims. Other times the headlines seem to suggest that Black victims are to blame for their own deaths, engaging in what critics sometimes allege is a form of character assassination. When contrasted with media portrayal of white suspects and accused murderers, the differences are more striking. News outlets often choose to run headlines that exhibit an air of disbelief, okay? Headlines that exhibit an air of disbelief at an alleged white killer's supposed actions. Sometimes they appear to go out of their way to boost the suspect's character, carrying quotes from relatives or acquaintances that often paint even alleged murderers in a positive light. Okay, white alleged murderers. So then they go through to show you some examples of what they're talking about, this pattern that you see, especially in white controlled media. Alabama suspect brilliant but social misfit. Montgomery's latest homicide victim had history of narcotics abuse, tangles with the law. Son in Staten Island murders was brilliant, athletic, but his demons were the death of parents. Trayvon Martin was suspended 3 times from school. Oregon school shooting suspect fascinated with guns, but was a devoted Mormon, his friends say. Police made this statement here: slain Lakeland teen had been shot before, death possibly drug related. Santa Barbara shooting, suspect was soft-spoken, polite, and gentleman, ex-principal says. Okay, so you get the idea here. Go read this article. This gets deep into it. All right, if we go back to the piece here from the New York Times, and then I want to go to the segment from Roland Martin and Filtered. Okay, this deals with where Charlie Kirk stood on political issues from the New York Times. Okay, so he talked about George Floyd. He talked about when we deal with anti-Semitism, Charlie Kirk was repeatedly accused of anti-Semitism, including by fellow conservatives. He was a proponent of the Great Replacement theory, a once fringe conspiracy theory positing that Jews are trying to replace white Americans with non-white immigrants. That ideology motivated the gunman who killed 11 worshipers at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018. Okay. All right. So check out, let's see. So we have that. And then his comments on Islam as well. Okay, now with free speech, page 4 on free speech, Charlie Kirk was a self-declared supporter of free speech, and Turning Point USA was known for its free speech advocacy. Okay, so they say. The group was known for placing giant rubber beach balls on campuses and invited students to write comments on the balls in a symbolic way of exercising their free speech rights. Charlie Kirk also invited students to debate him, supporting reasonable disagreements. Now, usually these so-called debates, okay, usually Charlie Kirk wasn't debating professors. He usually wasn't debating law school professors, attorneys, historians, people with PhDs in history, things of this nature. Okay, he's debating freshmen, sophomores in college. He usually wasn't debating graduate students. He usually wasn't debating people who were experts in the areas that he's talking about. Because when you go through and look at even on college campuses, the so-called debates that he had, and if you watch him on the show, a lot of this stuff is just nonsense. And it appeals to a dumbed down audience. It appeals to a lot of people who are not college educated, who don't understand history, who don't understand law, who don't understand economics, and don't really understand politics. This is who this appeals to. Okay, in several instances, Charlie Kirk has used the First Amendment to sue universities that tried to block his presence. Critics have argued that Charlie Kirk's promotion of free speech was tinged with hypocrisy. Okay, just like with Donald Trump on Inauguration Day saying that they're bringing back free speech, and Republicans were supposed to be for free speech and against cancel culture, things like this. And now you have Jimmy Kimmel's show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, who was suspended because of comments he made about Charlie Kirk. You have Trump trying to get people canceled, Stephen Colbert's show on CBS, things of this nature. But they were supposed to be for free speech. No, they're hypocrites. It's only free speech when they say it. Critics have argued that Charlie Kirk's promotion of free speech was tinged with hypocrisy, pointing to Turning Points USA, quote unquote, professor watch list, the professor watch list, in which students were asked to list professors with leftist positions. I thought you all were for free speech. Okay? And Dr. Stacy Patton was on that list, African-American female professor. And I posted about this on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network. We're going to go to that article here. So this was a piece from AtlantaBlackStar.com. Now, Stacy Patton is a professor and a writer. She posted on her Facebook page about this, and then AtlantaBlackStar.com picked up the article. So we shared one of the original posts on social media platforms, and then also I shared the piece from AtlantaBlackStar.com because she talked about the vile messages that she got from some of Charlie Kirk's supporters because she's on the professor watch list. So if we look at this article here from Atlanta.com, so if we look at this article, here from AtlantaBlackStar.com called So Vile, MAGA Maniacs Go After Black Professor After She Says Charlie Kirk and His Followers Terrorized Her for Months. Okay, so this is Dr. Stacy Patton, and it's dealing with the social media post that she made. This article is from September 14th, 2025. An author, speaker, and professor at Morgan State University and Howard University is facing a brutal onslaught from MAGA from the MAGA sphere after posting a statement about the violent threats she received after right-wing influencer and political extremist Charlie Kirk added her to his so-called Professor Watch List, also known as his digital hit list last year, okay, in 2024. Stacey Patton's post comes just days after Charlie Kirk was gunned down at a speaking engagement at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah, on Wednesday, September 10th, as he discussed mass shootings in the U.S. I am on Charlie Kirk's hit list, Stacey Patton wrote to her more than 200,000 Facebook followers. And here's a picture of Stacey Patton also. So you all saw this on my Facebook page. Quote, his so-called Professor Watch List, run under the umbrella of Turning Point USA, is nothing more than a digital hit list for academics who dare to speak truth to power. I landed there in 2024 after writing commentary that inflamed the MAGA faithful, and once my name went up, the harassment machine roared to life, she continued. Kirk co-founded Turning Point USA, a right-wing youth organization and nonprofit that advocates for conservative politics on high school and college campuses. Although branded as a group that supports patriotism and freedom, it has a record of rhetoric and alliances that align with white supremacist and Christian nationalist ideologies. That's white Christian nationalist ideologies. That's what it is, because they're preaching white Christian nationalism. Something that's apparent in the abuse Stacey Patton and many other educators have endured over the years at the hands of Turning Point USA and the MAGA faithful, if they were labeled by Kirk and his followers as advancing quote unquote leftist propaganda. But I thought you people were for free speech. I thought they were for free speech. So she shared, she said, for weeks my inbox and voicemail were deluged, mostly with white men spat venom, mostly white men spat venom through the phone, calling her the B word, C word, the N word. They threatened all manner of violence, she described. Quote, they overwhelmed the university's PR lines and the president's office with calls demanding that I be fired. Quote, the flood was so relentless that the head of campus security reached out to offer me an escort because they feared one of these keyboard soldiers might step out of his basement and come do me harm, end quote. And I am not unique, she added. She said that, quote, Kirk's watch list, referring to Charlie Kirk, his watch list terrorized legions of professors across the country, women, black faculty, queer scholars, basically anyone who challenged white supremacy, gun culture, or Christian nationalism suddenly found themselves targets of coordinated abuse. That is the culture of violence Charlie Kirk built. He normalized violence. He curated it, monetized it, incised it on anyone who dared to puncture his movement's lies, she continued. Okay, so read the rest of this from Stacey Patton. And this, once again, pokes a hole in their whole concept of advocating for free speech and things like this. But then they have the Professor Watch List. But I thought you all were for free speech. It's only free speech. They're only for free speech when it's coming from them. They're only for free speech, just like the Republicans today, just like Trump and the Trump administration. They're only for free speech when it's coming from them. When it's anybody else, they want to try to get them pulled off the air, get them fired, get them shut down, things of this nature. It's only the free speech that they advocate for is only coming from them. All right, now I want to go to this segment from Roland Martin Unfiltered, where Roland broke down the history of anti-black statements that Charlie Kirk has made. And he was talking to Lauren Victoria Burke on this show. This is from last week. GOP political theater, Dems boxed in as Republicans put sanitized Kirk resolution. I think this is the right one.
It also looks like you had a lot of Democrat pushback to what was going to go down, because earlier when you and I talked, it was sort of like, all right, we're going to move forward this vote. And it seems, you know, after we did our live, after it hit social and other places, all of a sudden Democratic leaders realized, oh, we got a problem.
Well, yeah, Roland, it seemed to go from, okay, vote your conscience, do what you want to do. Maybe they were assuming the members were going to vote yes. You know, when you read some of this language about, look, political violence is wrong, you know, this is terrible, that's hard to vote against, right? I mean, that's part of this. That's hard to vote against statements like, wow, let's make the statement that political violence is wrong. Well, I think every member, Republican and Democrat, would agree with that and make that statement. But the problem is, if you listen to the quotes of Charlie Kirk, and particularly with regard to quotes with regard to black women, but not only those quotes, that's problematic. And it's also problematic when you have constituents who don't know all the details of all of this stuff. They've seen the clip reels of Charlie Kirk. There was another one that came out last night that Tara Setmeyer put out there that was just running the things that he has said over the years. That is hard to explain to your constituents who are seeing this person on social media say negative things, very biased things, very racist things about members of the black community. And then you voted to honor him. I mean, you know, everyone understands that your member of Congress is against violence. Nobody was for what they saw happen on that video last week. Absolutely nobody. But the Republicans are trying to make this a one-sided argument that the Democrats are all Antifa, that the Democrats are pro-violence, and that is why they're trying to sort of corner them into this vote.
All right, so you made a point about what Tara Setmeyer posted last night. It's about a 6-minute video. I actually want to play that so people can actually hear for themselves. So this is what she posted on Twitter last night.
One more thing that's on my mind tonight, and conservatives everywhere, the idea that people are saying, well, he was an extremist, or he was a racist, or he was a Nazi, or a misogynist, whatever. Charlie Kirk was a mainstream conservative Republican. He had views that are held by tens of millions of people, including more than half the country in the last election.
If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified. It begs the question, when you see a black pilot, you wonder, you say, I hope they are qualified.
And in the spirit of affirmative action, we have Ramon and Cadillac are your two pilots. They've never flown before, but they are black.
If I'm dealing with somebody in customer service who's a moronic black woman, is she there because of her excellence, or is she there because of affirmative action?
I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know you do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously.
The war on white people continues.
You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
We are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles. LeBron James is a self-interested, narcissistic, and we know he's not very smart. You're representing your nation. You're selfish sociopath, not very bright, not wise, not somebody of good character. She is a shame to the country.
Blacks in America did not have the same rights they had today. Data shows they were actually better in the 1940s.
Let's get loud for Kyle Rittenhouse. I'm also going to offer some context and some nuance about the death of George Floyd that no one dares to say out loud, which is that this guy was a scumbag.
Remember what BLM stands for? Burn, loot, and murder.
Now, does that mean it deserves to die? That's two totally different things. Of course not. Prowling blacks go around for fun to go target white people. That's a fact. There's no such thing as white privilege or racism. So black people are allowed to talk about black culture in a way that white culture cannot. Black people can go up and say that there's a baby mama problem in black America, and white people are not allowed to say that. Oh, I just did. So what are you going to do, cancel me? Black people are allowed to say, I'm a grown man, I got way too much Black people are allowed. Skin color now gets their own summertime celebration. Oh, wow, look how far blacks have come. It has now become a racial complaining day. Thomas Sowell and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King. This guy is not worthy of a national holiday.
There's a mythology around MLK that does not warrant the reverence that he gets treated with in America.
We have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding. The country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. The Democrats are not lifting a finger to remember the well over 100 people that have died in Texas Hill Country. The death toll likely would not have been as high if it wasn't for DEI.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is what your country looks like on critical race theory.
You're going to remove my appendix and you're a black lesbian.
Ketanji Brown Jackson is an embodiment of the tyranny that we currently live under. She's an ideological, unintelligent, yet confident fanatic.
Why does Kirk believe passing the Civil Rights Act was a mistake? Now, again, apparently they don't listen to the show because we do that at least once a week, right?
So she wants to be the first ever black woman on the Supreme Court, yet she won't even admit that she's a woman.
The transgender movement is an introductory phase. These doctors need to be put in prison to get you to strip yourself of your humanity. A Nuremberg-style trial to mesh with machines. Interestingly, I think there is an argument to bring back the MRS degree.
Reject feminism.
Young women need to get married at a younger age and start having kids. I'm studying sociology. No, you're not. We know why you're here.
Submit to your husband, Taylor. You're not in charge.
You will find a husband if you have the intent to find a husband.
You got to change your name. If not, you don't really mean it.
Democrat women want to die alone without children.
A lot of them are on birth control too, and birth control really screws up female brains, by the way.
It's really rich. I didn't know women not to complain 50 years ago. That's funny. We should tell them to stop freezing their eggs and start finding their partner earlier and have lots of babies.
Every single one of you need to make sure that your loved ones are not on birth control.
So materially insane to think that 1 in 5 American women will be raped in their life.
It is. I agree.
No, meaning that they're lying about being raped.
You're comparing abortion to the Holocaust.
Absolutely, I am. In fact, it's worse. It's worse because Jewish donors have been the #1 funding mechanism of radical, open border, neoliberal, quasi-Marxist policies. By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals. It should be public. It should be quick. It should be televised. At what age should you start to see public execution?
16. I think you could do it earlier. I think you maybe at age 12.
I want to watch that execution. That'll make my day better. A lot. I mean, Joe Biden is a bumbling, dementia-filled, Alzheimer's, corrupt tyrant who should honestly be put in prison and or given the death penalty for his crimes against America.
The Democrat Party believes everything that God hates.
We're dealing with maggots, vermin, and swine here. These are not good people. They're not even a little bit good. In fact, I know people that went to Haiti passively as agnostic atheists, and they came back searching for Jesus because they saw legit demonic activity. Kamala Harris wants to see the elimination of the United States of America.
Democrat Party supports everything that God hates.
There's not much you can do, folks. You have a government that hates you. You have a traitor as the president. Buy weapons. I keep on saying that.
As top Republicans reject any link between GOP rhetoric and Paul Pelosi assault. If some amazing patriot out there in San Francisco wants to really be a midterm hero, someone should go and bail this guy out. Native-born Americans, you better buy weapons, everybody. Have a lot of guns at your disposal. I would never leave your home without a weapon. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
We actually need looser gun laws because I think that
Oh, yeah. They said we have more guns at the Turning Point HQ than you could imagine. Yeah, if anyone ever tries to come, that will not end well.
Oh, no. Imagine the world without Joy Reid. Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee or Michelle Obama or Ketanji Brown Jackson.
I am channeling the emotions of millions of conservatives who are angry. They knew Charlie. They loved Charlie. They viewed Charlie as a mainstream conservative Republican.
Wow. That said it all, Lauren.
Yes, it did. One of the reasons why we haven't seen that, of course, is because legacy media is now being taken over by the right. I mean, let's face it, ABC and CBS in particular That reel, though, is something that some folks on Capitol Hill have suggested that what the Democrats should have done was read into the record some of the quotes of Charlie Kirk. I mean, have some sort of answer for this idea that he is just so perfect and we've got to do all this honoring. If you just read his words back to everybody, that would probably change the messaging on that. But instead, what has happened is the Democrats are really just, as I said, laying down and allowing the Republicans to run a narrative without any sort of pushback against it. I mean, there is really not much pushback. And it is an incredible thing to see. There is the theory, too, on Capitol Hill that the leadership has to sort of take the hit for some of the members that are in closer districts, as you were saying earlier, some of these battleground districts where they've got to vote yes because it's a close district. So the leadership has to sort of, I've heard a few members say to me today, the leadership has to sort of take the hit for those members. But the problem becomes that rank and file person in a district that doesn't pay that much attention to politics as we do on this level, that is just looking at this and sees a clip reel like that, has already seen a bunch of social media with Charlie Kirk's clips, and then you're saying to your member of Congress, logically, why would you vote to honor a person who has said these types of things? That is problematic.
And they did pass a resolution in June regarding the shooting in Minnesota. Go to my iPad, and if you look at this, they describe what took place. They describe the individual, and then they say in here, whereas when these violent acts expose division, must persevere and pursue democratic principles, resolving the differences through debate and civil discourse. No, first of all, it's a very short resolution. It does not even remotely compare to how laudatory it was about Charlie Kirk being a Christian and family person, and how he didn't say, and he welcomed debate with all Americans and all sorts of stuff like this, as if that clip, that video we put there never even existed. So,
right.
so now it's going to be a question of, are you going to have Democrats who are going to say, no, I'm sorry, you want me to vote on a resolution that leaves out a whole bunch of stuff, and somebody who you want Democrats to vote on something where Charlie Kirk attacked very members of that chamber, like
exactly
Congresswoman
right.
Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and others.
Exactly right. And I can tell you that last votes about an hour ago, I was getting a lot of no's and I was getting a lot of hell no's. And the hell no's typically came from the lady members of the Congressional Black Caucus. It will be very surprising to me if any of the lady members of the Congressional Black Caucus vote yes on that resolution. Now, the VZ resolution, effectively condemning political violence in a very straightforward way, may give them an out. So we're probably going to see more news tomorrow about the VZ, the Mark VZ resolution, which is, of course, going to say that it's against political violence, be a more straightforward set of wording with regard to the what happened, the murder of Charlie Kirk, and just state it a lot plainer than what you saw from the Republicans.
Okay, so that was from Roland Martin Unfiltered, and the name of that clip is GOP Political Theater, Dems boxed in as Republicans push sanitized Kirk resolution. So that was from September 19th, 2025. So as you saw, Charlie Kirk, in his own words, his anti-Black statements he's made over the years. Okay, now I want to go to this piece here from, I can't remember if I showed you this one from the Washington Post. Yeah, this one here. Charlie Kirk says Michelle Obama among Black women who steal a white person's slot. Now, we already talked about the comments that he made, but I just want to show you the article here so you can go read this as well. Okay. Yeah, Charlie Kirk says Michelle Obama among Black women who steal a white person's slot. And okay, the far right commentator said the former First Lady and other supporters of affirmative action lacked the quote unquote brain processing power to succeed on their own. This is from July 14th, 2023. Okay, so we talked about the comments here, but they're in this article that you can check out as well. Joanne Reed, that used to host the Readout on MSNBC, she was on Angela Yee's show a few days ago, Way Up, and she was talking about Charlie Kirk and Bill Montgomery. Okay, now Bill Montgomery was this old white conservative who convinced Charlie Kirk to drop out of community college when Charlie Kirk was like 18 or 19 years old. And he helped Charlie Kirk co-found Turning Point USA. Okay. Let's take a look at this piece here quickly, and I'm going to show you the video. This is from Economic India Times. Or the Economic Times. Let me see. Okay, read this article. Bill Montgomery, the man who inspired Charlie Kirk to drop out of college to start Turning Point USA. All you need to know about Trump allies mentor. Okay, and this is from September 10th, 2025, Economic Times. And it goes through and breaks down this history. Okay.
Yes.
Now, talk about that watch list, because I don't know if people really know about this.
Right. And first of all, what you have to understand about Charlie Kirk is the reason he dropped out of junior college at 18 years old is because he was discovered by a man named Bill Montgomery, who was a Tea Partier, a very rich, I think probably billionaire, who spotted him when he was in high school spouting free market conservative ideas and convinced him, became his mentor. This man was 72 years old, and he gave him $4.7 million to start Turning Point USA. And the first thing that Turning Point USA did, they started this in 2012. This is when Barack Obama was running for re-election, and a lot of the right were really fearful that he had the youth on their side. What they had was Rush Limbaugh, whose audience was much older. So what they decided they needed to do was take that Rush Limbaugh energy, right-wing talk radio, and get it with the young people, right? Mm-hmm. And get it on the campuses. And the right has always been angry that they feel college campuses are too liberal. So Turning Point USA was really started by the 72-year-old man, Bill Montgomery, but he was the face, Charlie Kirk. And what they did was they sent him onto campuses to try to argue for the free market. When that didn't really take off, he eventually turned to things that are easier to sell. Racism, sexism, misogyny, just hate talk. But that started to make it take off. And during the pandemic, he really blew up. That is where he came from. And so, one of the projects that Turning Point USA created that still exists to this day is what they called a campus watch list. And what that is a snitch list. They basically encourage people on college campuses who are conservative to report on their professors who they think are too liberal, who spout liberal ideas. They put their names, their addresses. In some cases, they dox them, and they encourage them to be attacked. And so some of the people on that watch list, who are mainly black women, brown folks, gay folks, people who are minorities, are on that list. They've been doxxed. They've been terrorized. People have reported getting death threats from being on that list.
All right, article for Vanity Fair. And Professor Hunter Adams sent this to me, and then also my friend Amisha Cross, who you see on MSNBC sometimes. Amisha Cross posted this article as well on her Facebook page. I want to go to this here from Vanity Fair. Writer Ta-Nehisi Coates did a deep dive into Charlie Kirk's history and past comments and how his legacy is being sanitized. And I'm just going to share an excerpt from this with you. You can check it out. This is by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Charlie Kirk redeem the political class finds its lost cause. All right, but when you look at the subtitle, by ignoring the rhetoric and actions of the Turning Point USA founder, pundits and politicians are sanitizing his legacy. By ignoring the rhetoric and actions of the Turning Point USA founder, pundits and politicians are sanitizing his legacy. This is from September 16, 2025, a Ta-Nehisi Coates. And one of the segments here, excerpts I want to focus in on. Let me scroll down to it. It's not just, for instance, that Kirk held disagreeable views, that he was pro-life, that he believed in public executions, or that he rejected the separation of church and state. It's that Kirk reveled in open bigotry. Charlie Kirk reveled in open bigotry. Indeed, claims of Kirk's civility are tough to square with his penchant for demeaning members of the LGBTQ community as freaks and referring to trans people with the slur, quote unquote, tranny. Faced with the prospect of a Kamala Harris presidency, Charlie Kirk told his audience that the threat had to be averted because Harris wanted to, quote, kidnap your child via the trans agenda, end quote. Okay, so, but he also had anti-Black sentiments as well, and Islamophobic sentiments. There's a segment here, okay, right here. Kirk habitually railed against, quote unquote, Black crime, claiming that, quote, prowling Blacks go around for fun to target white people, end quote. He repeated the rape accusations against Yusef Salaam, a member of the exonerated Central Park Five, who is now a New York City councilman, calling him a quote unquote disgusting pig who had gotten away with gang rape, end quote. Now, I don't know if Charlie Kirk accused Donald Trump of sexually abusing E. Jean Carroll, because Donald Trump was found liable in court, in civil court, for sexually abusing her. I don't know if Charlie Kirk wanted to talk about that. Whatever distaste Charlie Kirk held for Blacks was multiplied when he turned to those from Haiti. Whatever distaste Charlie Kirk held for Blacks or African Americans was multiplied when he turned to those from Haiti, people of African descent. Haiti was, by Kirk's lights, a country, quote, infested with demonic voodoo, end quote, whose migrants were raping your women and hunting you down at night, end quote. These Haitians, as well as undocumented immigrants from other countries, were, quote, having a field day, end quote, per Kirk, and coming for your daughter next. Coming for your daughter next. The only hope was Donald Trump, who had to prevail lest Haitians become your masters. The point of this so-called mastery was as familiar as it was conspiratorial, quote unquote, great replacement agenda, Charlie Kirk howled, one that sought to make the country more. The southern border was the dumping ground of the planet. Okay, direct quote from Charlie Kirk, the dumping ground of the planet, he claimed, and a magnet for the rapists, the thugs, the murderers, fighting age males. Quote, they're coming from across the world, from China, from Russia, from Middle Eastern countries, he said. And they're coming in, and they're coming in, and they're coming in, and they're coming in. You can probably imagine where this line of thinking eventually went. Okay. All right. So check out the rest of this piece from Ta-Nehisi Coates. He gets deep into it in Charlie Kirk talking about an anti-white agenda, going on and on about black people, his anti-black comments, etc. All right, so hopefully you learned a lot today. Be sure to visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I'm historian and national political commentator Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Be sure to register for my online history class that starts Saturday, October 4th, 2025, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient African empires, the Moors, 5000 BC to 1880. As you get 5 of my digital download lectures free. We'll deal with ancient African empires. We'll deal with thousands of years of African history. You can download the lesson plan here also. And we'll deal with the, we'll also deal with the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe and brings Europe out of the Dark Ages. And we'll deal with how this leads to the transatlantic slave trade taking place as well. Okay. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Classes on sale $80, regularly $130. You can register right now for it. Then also you can support us through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Here's our Cash App. So visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the online history class that I teach on Saturdays. Class starts Saturday, October 4th, 2025, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient African empires, the Moors, and the transatlantic slave trade, 5000 BC to 1800 AD. This is a 10-week online class that I teach. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teaching from the Nile Valley region of Africa into Europe. And these teachers are going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. You can download our class lesson plan here as well. And you can support us through Cash App and PayPal, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This is our Cash App account, $ the AHN show. These other ones are fake African History Network Cash App account. You go to ours, it'll say Michael, probably show my picture there. And you can click right here on the link, and it shows our Cash App QR code as well. This lets us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. You can also support us through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. My lectures and digital downloads are also available at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Because right now it's correct wrong behaviors, not over till we win, Wakanda forever.